Okay.
So a year has passed since you announced your retirement, and any ideas on what's next for you? You've had a whole year to...
Sure. Well, I'm looking at several things. I want to do something that I can advocate in the transportation infrastructure space. I don't have an exact job at this point, but again, talking to various people, like I said, I really would like to be in somewhere where I can advocate for transportation infrastructure and also national security issues. I spent my career in transportation infrastructure on the House Armed Services Committee, so doing something in that line.
How about, are you going to stay in this area, or are you going to return to Washington?
Well, this is home to me, so I'll always be anchored here in Bedford County. But I'll have to spend a good bit of time in Washington, D.C. And again, hopefully I'll be traveling around the country talking about the need for infrastructure investment and the need to improve our transportation system. There's a lot of ideas out there that we tried to pass when we were on the committee, but weren't able to do it. So I still think there's opportunity out there to talk about those types of things.
Any chance that Trump has a job for you?
I don't think so. I don't know that I want to go back into government. I've been there for the last 18 years, and depends on, it'd have to be a pretty special job.
He's got jobs all the time.
I know. I do not want to be his chief of staff. That is the second most powerful job in Washington, but it's the toughest job in Washington. And that's why, seeing General Kelly leave, that's not unusual. Chief of staff probably is 18 months, 2.5 years, and then it's a grinder, it's a meat grinder, chief of staff.
So, but if he would come to you with a particular offer, something in transportation?
Something in transportation, or there's other things that I would consider, but I don't know what they all are, but again, it'd have to be a pretty interesting job.
Okay. All right. I was reading some of the stories that basically made reference to your father, and at one point you said you couldn't use your father's playbook to make your headway with legislation. You had to learn a different way.
Sure.
Is that, did you teach anybody else?
Well, I hope so. I hope some folks watched what we did. As you just said, when my father was in Congress, it was a different era. They had different tools. The place operated somewhat differently. But when I came to Congress, I had to figure out a new way to get the ball down the field. And the number one thing were congressionally directed spending or earmarks. My father had those. I didn't have them, but I think I figured out ways to get people on board. It was trying to convince them policy. And the line I use is my father had a hammer, I had to use hugs to convince people to get on board and stay with me on the legislation.
But I did understand that you didn't hug everybody as much as you might have had.
Well,
I gave them a friendly.
I didn't. I put my arm on a lot of people. Put my arm around them, or grab hold of their forearm and say. But it wasn't a full blown hug. It was close.
Would you say you tried to make yourself? You tried to be congenial. You tried to be,
Sure.
flexible.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. Is obviously if you don't have the ability with an earmark, such as it were, to convince somebody very strongly, you've got to do it a different way, and that is to be congenial, to sell, to persuade people to move in your position, to move towards your position, or to support it. And I think that's important too for folks living in the 9th District or the 13th or Pennsylvania, around the country, to realize that you've got to move the ball down the field. If I stand on the 20-yard line and say, I'm not going to do this unless I get everything I want, then I'm going to probably pump the ball from the 20-yard line and give it to the other team. You've got to be able to move the ball down the field, and I think so lost on so many people, politicians, that they get this hardened position. And when you look at the Constitution of the United States, that was the greatest compromise in the history of the United States of America. When you think about what all those folks went through, slave states versus non-slave states, and they were able to come together. I mean, that's a pretty significant compromise, and we're talking about things today that aren't as significant as slavery was a terrible thing, but they figure out a way to move forward.
Well, and that's where I was going with this, because definitely our country seems to be becoming more polarized, and basically I was wondering, gee, are you getting out because you're frustrated, or are you getting, is it just, is there another reason?
No, my reason is I had very little frustration because of the two committees I served on, Transportation Infrastructure and the Armed Services Committee, both committees that operate in a very bipartisan way. Before I got to the Transportation Committee, we kind of got into partisan battles. That was the first thing I did. I said, hold a second, we have to figure out how we can come together, because transportation, roads, bridges, aviation, that's not Republican and Democrat. Those are American assets, and we've got to figure out a way to move forward. So I had, I would say, my frustration level was very low. I get frustrated when we can't do other things, and it becomes very polarizing, and the personal attacks that happen, and that doesn't just happen Democrat versus Democrat. You know, we see it right here in central Pennsylvania, Republicans attacking Republicans, and it's just not the right thing to do. Again, sure that folks I'm lined up with in a lot of issues, 90% of the time we're probably together. The 10% of the time doesn't mean I'm opposed to you. It means that I don't like it. It means that, hey, we're on a different issue. Let's move forward. Figure out a way to move forward on other issues.
Okay. All right. So why did you decide to retire? You know, that people are still asking that.
Sure.
And some people say that, hey, you know, you thought you might lose. You know, couldn't stand another election, couldn't get Blair and Bedford counties back.
I did not. That had nothing to do with why I left. It has solely to do with, or the biggest reason, is that we terminated our chairmanships. I did 6 years as chairman. I kind of equated to being, if you're a starter on a sports team, and then they come to you and say, oh, hey, you can't start anymore, we're going to have you sit on the bench. And I just didn't want to do that. I was a starter for 6 years, and I just did not want to sit on the bench. And another reason down the list, but that was the number one reason. But down the list was, it was time, you know, let somebody else have an opportunity to serve the people with new ideas, fresh ideas, and so I'm completely comfortable and confident with why I made those decisions, and again, it had nothing to do with thinking I would lose an election. But in my mind, I didn't think I would lose an election.
How about, I was going to say, why did you choose to support Dr. Joyce?
Because of the field of 8 people out there. I looked at some of them I didn't know at all. Some of them I knew very well. And the ones that I knew very well, I just didn't think they were the right people for the job. And Dr. Joyce, I've known him for 25 years. I think he's a conservative. I think he's a person, unlike so many of those other candidates, maybe all 7 of them, would have gone down there and given their voting card to the Freedom Caucus, or the Heritage Foundation, or to Club for Growth. I mean, those folks, they would. That's when those folks come in and they say they're going to do that. And John Joyce was very clear to say, my card belongs to the people in the 9th District, the 13th District. It doesn't belong to any Freedom Caucus. And I, myself also, I wasn't a joiner. I didn't join any of those groups in Washington. Freedom Caucus, the Republican Study Committee, because, again, my focus was doing what the Constitution said, what was good for the voters, what was good for the state, what was good for the nation. And again, he was the one candidate that stood out that said, I'm not going to let anybody control my card. And again, a couple others would have, I'm sure, would have been controlled by the Freedom Caucus or Heritage, or, you know, there's several names of groups. And so the final analysis, I think we got the right guy for the job. I think John's going to do a fantastic job in Washington. He's already hit the ground running. And he's a common sense conservative. He's going to fight for conservative principles, but he's also going to advance the ball down the field for the team.
Mm-hmm. So you got a lot of faith in him.
Absolutely.
But he's going to be the starter. He's going to be somebody brand new, learning the ropes.
Well, and you know, it's something that I think has been lost on people for main reason. My father was not a career politician. I was not a career politician. John Joyce is not a career politician. Now, when you're in Congress for 28 years like my father, or, you know, the son of a guy in 18 years, everybody says you're a career politician. But we started out in the private sector for the first 20 years of our lives. And you had a couple of those candidates that ran that they're career politicians.